everyone. Today I'm going to talk about how to do sand casting. I tried to do a video on Friday and got the whole thing finished, and I know a bunch of you were waiting for it on Friday, but I got the whole thing finished and tried to download it from iMovie back onto my phone, and there wasn't enough memory, and so I made some room on my phone and deleted all the files needed for the video, so I lost the whole entire video. And to be honest, it takes longer to do the editing and the put together of the YouTube video than it actually does to do the project. So anyway, I was really upset about it, but we're back and I'm going to try this again. It's now Monday morning, so let's give it a go. I'm going to talk about how all the tools that you're going to need. I'm also going to talk about a little bit about how to season your Crucible, because that's really important, but I'm not going to do that. So if you do need to season a brand new Crucible, you can do a YouTube search, and maybe I'll post a good one in the links below. But anyway, let's get started again. Okay, so some of the things that you're going to need to do this, and you don't need much, are a flask. The first thing that you're going to need is a flask, and that's something that we use to actually put the sand in and create our mold for sand casting. The other thing, and there's big ones, there's all different kinds of sizes out there. This is a smaller one. You're also going to need some casting sand, and I'll post a link to where you can find some of this stuff. It may not be the only place that you can find some of this stuff, but I will post some links. This one I got locally. This one was $28.50 per can, and it's a 5-pound can of casting sand. So far it's lasted me over a year. The other thing you're going to need are some pliers, a big hammer. Where'd my pliers go? Can you see it there? A big hammer. I call him Big Ben, but a heavy hammer, and something to hold your mold together. I use just 2 pieces of copper. I have a ton of copper laying around, and that's just going to go on both sides of your mold to keep the sand from spilling out, even though it probably wouldn't, but you might want to have that anyway. All right, you'll also need a torch. Now, I use a Smith Little torch, and I have an oxy-propane setup. I use an oxygen concentrator and propane. Don't try to do this with a butane torch. It won't work. You need a lot more heat for that. You'll also need a crucible. Now, this crucible I got on Rio Grande, and I got 2 of them, 2 different sizes. This one I believe is a 2-ounce crucible, and it comes with, I think this comes with the this handle on here, and they also have a smaller one, maybe a 1-ounce crucible, and a larger one that I think is a 4-ounce crucible, and then a big giant one, which I will never use. I'd go with the 2-ounce crucible. That's going to be enough to do small jewelry-sized pieces. You'll also need a little pokey thing. Maybe it's a toothpick or a nail, anything that can carve a groove in your sand. You will also need some protective eyewear. These are like welder's glasses, although I don't think they're for actually welding, but they are for, they kind of look like those cataract glasses, but they're a little stronger than that. They're for keeping your eyes protected from the flare of the torch, and trust me, you will need it. Sunglasses are not going to work for that. I'll put a link to what they're actually called so you can get yourself a pair. There's some on Amazon even. The other thing you're going to need, and this is probably the last thing you're going to need, I think, is some baby powder. We'll get to reasons why later. So let's get started. I'm going to set all this stuff aside here for now. And oh, a cookie sheet. I use the cookie sheet to kind of do the best I can to keep the sand contained and easier to clean up. It does get everywhere. So we open this up, and you'll see the casting sand is really sticky. It's got some kind of oil in it, I believe, that helps it to form and hold together and not fall apart when you make your mold. So if you find one of these kind of flasks, be sure to try to find one that has, can you see these little notches on here? That way, when you put the mold together, it lines up perfectly, because we're going to have to take it apart and then put it back together again at some point. So you want those ends to line up perfectly so your mold is right. start with the side that has no notches on it, where the holes are, where the notches go into. Start on that side. This one, a smaller one, has notches in it as well. You can see there, and also it lines up perfectly with the hole. All right, so I'm just going to grab some sand and start dumping it in there. The other thing you're going to need, of course, is something to cast, a nice mold or a thing to use as your form. And people use all kinds of things. You can use really whatever you want. I've gone with casting sand. I've actually gone as thin as a piece of cedar leaf or cedar twig. I didn't know if it was going to work, but it actually worked. Probably not as good as if you did it with like the old wax casting, but that's like a whole very expensive setup that you need. This is great for doing smaller projects or less detail. You will get a pretty good amount of detail using casting sand, but not like you would get using the old wax casting. And I don't do that, so I'm not doing a video on that. So once you get your mold kind of full of sand, you'll grab your hammer and just start pounding it in there to make it nice and firm. I apologize for the banging and the shaking. Grab a little bit more. And this, you're gonna do this a few times before you really get the hang of it, before you're not doing and redoing it as you go. Trust me, it's okay. There is a learning curve to this, just like anything else that we do, right? The other thing these things come in handy for are this part right here. So I want to scrape off this top layer right along the edge of the flask so that it's nice and flat and flush to the sides of my flask. There's a little bit of a divot in here. I'll just add a little more. There we go. So what we are casting today are these little skulls. Now, when you place your, whatever it is you're going to make a mold or a cast out of, into the sand, I made the mistake of one time doing it way down here, and then I'd have to create a whole funnel to go all the way out to the mouth of the flask, which gives your chance of success, it lessens, because there's that much more distance that the silver has to travel before it starts to cool and solidify, and that happens really fast. So try to make your or place your piece up as close to the edge as you can. I go about 1/4 of an inch from the top of the flask, and then press it down in. So here we go. I'm gonna press this in, and this is really firm. So if you're pressing something fragile, it might be a little bit more difficult to do. So give that press in there. And I was rocking it a little bit. However, you don't want to rock it. You're going to create, it won't be the same. It'll come out differently. So then if a tiny little bit of a rock doesn't work, or press that in there, you can just gently tap it. And the other thing that we're not too terribly concerned about at this point is the mouth, or the opening of the flask where the sand is. You can see I've kind of sloped that down a little bit there. You can start to do that, but don't really concern yourself about that yet. We'll do that last. Now, I've got my skulls set in there. I'm going to give the middle a little bit more tap. There, that's good. And now we can start working on the second half of this mold. So place that on top. Oh, wait, not yet. The baby powder. This is where the baby powder comes in. So we are going to have to take this mold apart once we get the second half of the sand in. And you don't want the two halves sticking together. So the baby powder prevents the two sides of your sand in each side of the flask from sticking together. One thing that you're going to have to do is create air vents for your the air to escape as the silver enters. Otherwise, it's just going to stop and there's going to be no room for it to go. So I like to take it and little lines. Some people will use a brush to do that. I just blow on it to get the excess sand, and it doesn't have to be very deep, just enough of a hole for a little bit of sand to exit, or a little bit of air to exit, sorry. And you want to do this before you take out whatever it is you're casting. Otherwise, little clumps of sand, oops, that's not going to work. Little clumps of sand will get inside the holes where your, the cavity where you want your cast to be. Okay. I'm just going to add a little bit more baby powder to that because we don't want that to collapse or to fill in. It'll fill in, but you'll see. I'm going to put that back on and start filling the other half of my flask. Pack it in as good as you can. I'm gonna need some more up in here. And then hammer it. I'm gonna lift this up a little bit so I don't hit my camera. And you can scrape that off. This side doesn't have to be as flush as the inside did. Hopefully that is good. I'm going to give it just a little bit of love before we take it apart. I am going to come in here and fill this top with some sand. Okay. Now because I have this on a bead stick, I can kind of create a little bit of hole easier. But if you're not using one of those, you're going to have to create your pour spout by hand. And I will have to clean that up with some. All right, perfect. So there's the front of my mold, and that looks pretty good. Easily and gently set that down. Now we're going to come over here, and before I pull that out of there, look and see how it made my tunnels perfect. Now I know on this side, this was the back or the second half, where those air slots are, and I can come in, oops, and use my nail or my little pokey piece, which I have lost. Here it is. I can come back and create that little air vent on this side, and I know exactly where it is. Now, this I can use to kind of create a like sort of funnel in the sand, and that's where the silver is going to pour through. You want the funnel large enough where the silver can pour through, but not too large, and also not too small where there's just like a little tiny hole entering into your piece. Okay. This side real quick. And there tends to be sometimes some like grains of sand. You want to make sure you pack those down so that when you tip this upright, they don't fall into your mold and change your mold. Okay, I think we're good. Oh, I want an air pocket at the bottom as well, or an air vent at the bottom. And I'm only going to do that on one side because this side looks like that was formed there. So we're good. And just take a look at it. Make sure. I'm not really concerned about this side because that's the back of the piece. Anything there can either be sanded off. Look at that eye there on the second one down. That's not quite right. I'm not going to mess with it because it looks like part of the eye came off, but I'm not going to worry about that because I can always take the silver out with like a tool. I'm not concerned about that. A little part of me is concerned about that. And I'm asking myself right now, what's more work? To just take a little grinding bit and go in there and grind out an eye, or to redo it? And I think it's going to be less work to go in there and grind out an eye with a bit. All right, so I'm leaving it. We have to pick our poison sometimes. Clean that up a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to put these together. Set this upright. And here's where I want to put these together. So I have those two pieces of copper. I'm going to put one on the back and one on the front, and bind it together with some leather or a rubber band. It even work. Anything. Some people will use a big clamp, but I don't have a big clamp. And the heat will not make it to the outside of this. All right, that's good. Now we can go over to the soldering station. Okay, so when I showed you my torch a moment ago, what I showed you is my soldering tip. That's a number 7 that I use for soldering, but we're gonna need something with a little bit more punch than that. So I bought the rosebud tip for melting silver. This has a little bit more of a flame on it. It's a little bit bigger. These are available on Amazon. So I'm just going to put that on there. Grab my crucible. Oh, I forgot to say, we also need scrap silver. So I have a little bit of scrap here. I have a little bit of scrap here. It's a great way to utilize your scrap. How do you know how much scrap you're going to need for your cast? Well, you don't, unless you want to go online and research volume and pi and all this other stuff and do the math. You're more than welcome to it. But after about a dozen times doing this, you're going to have a really good feel for how much scrap makes how much molten silver to fill a mold. I can't teach you that. That's something you're just going to have to learn by experience. And a lot of casting is just trial and error and eyeing things up, especially when it comes to actually pouring your silver. You're going to have to do it a few times. You might get it right the first time. That means that I did a really good job. Yay! Yay me! But most likely you won't get it right on the first time, and that's okay, because you just can melt the silver down again and start over and do it again. So let's get to the crucible. You'll see that my crucible has all kinds of like gook inside. It's actually not gook, and it's useful. It's flux, particularly borax. Now I just buy regular borax from the grocery store. It's like $1.87, give or take, in the detergent section, and keep it in a little yogurt cup. And I've had a box of it for years, and that's what I use as flux. You can even create a soldering flux with this, with just water and borax, and you'll have a flux, believe it or not, if you're ever in a pinch. So anyway, this is what's going to line the inside of your crucible to keep it nice and smooth like glass, and also to keep the silver from sticking to the inside of the crucible. I'm just going to talk about how you do this. I'm not going to do it because mine doesn't need it. And if there's like too much in there, and I tried to teach it in the video that I was, or talk about it in the video that got lost last Friday. And if you can see, there's like that red stuff. It's the same color red as in here. So if there's too much flux in your crucible and you start seeing these red glass-like, and they're almost even harder than glass, formations on your silver, that means you use too much flux. And that happened to me when I was trying to teach how to season a crucible the other day. So I'm not going to do that today. So you'll have to look up a video on how to season a crucible. So that's okay. These can be sanded off. Sometimes even a gentle tap with a hammer will crack these off of there. So it's not that big a deal. It's just more work. Time is money. All right, so I'm going to light my torch. Woo! Turned the oxygen on too fast. That's okay. This off a little bit. All right, you'll want to heat up your crucible before you add any silver. Otherwise, all of the heat is going to go to the silver, and then once the silver starts to get hot, but not hot enough to flow, it's going to transfer the heat to the crucible until the whole entire crucible is heated up, and it's just a pain in the butt. So, heat up your crucible first. I'm sorry about the humming or the motor that you hear. That's my oxygen concentrator. And I'm just going to go around and heat this all up. How do you know when your crucible's hot enough? Your flux, that red stuff, will start to turn orange. Maybe not. but it will start to turn a little bit orange on the spout. And by the way, we want to keep periodically moving the torch over to the spout, because if the spout isn't heated up when you go to pour, all of your silver is going to solidify on the spout. That's starting to get hot. You can start to see my inside of my crucible get a little orange there, and that's probably hot enough. But I'm going to go over here and make sure my spout is hot. And don't forget, I almost forgot, safety glasses. That flame in there, that orangey flame, and it's going to get red when we put silver in there. And the molten silver is going to have a, I forget what it's called. I forget what it's called. I'll never think of it. But that flame isn't good for your eyes to look at. And now my phone is ringing. Let me pause this. And I'll get back to you. So I'm back, and that gave me plenty of time to really get this crucible nice and hot. So, safety glasses. Put your safety glasses on, and now we can just start adding little bits of silver into this. And don't add all of your silver all at once. Add a little bit of it at a time. Let it get nice and melty, and then add a little bit more, because it does take like forever to do this part. And I just like to go in circles, heating up all of the silver at once. Sometimes I'll give it a blast on a stubborn part, but for the most part, you're working in circles, heating up all the silver all at once, just as you would if you were soldering a piece. Now, some people will tell you to add flux to this, but I never do. I find when I add flux to it, I get that red, even if it's just like that good flux that you would buy at any kind of jewelry supply store. I find I get that red gook, so I don't know. I don't think you need it. It's up to you. Play around with it. Every torch is different. Every crucible is different. Every setup is different. Now, the other thing that I like to do is come in. I have a really good solder pick, and I have a really crappy solder pick. And the crappy solder pick has been my sacrificial solder pick for things like this. And sometimes it just kind of helps to stir the pot a little bit. And that's sticking there. I don't know why. There we go. Don't leave your crappy solder pick in your hot melted solder for too long, or you have a really crappy solder pick. And also the bigger pieces I kind of like to fold in half. The smaller the condensed area that you can get your silver, the easier it is to melt. That had a little label on it left over. That's okay, it'll burn off. And like I said, it's kind of hard to tell how much silver you'll need for any given project. It's just a matter of eyeing it up. For this one, I'm going to need about the diameter, probably, of, once this balls up and melts, it'll probably be bigger than a quarter. But it just all depends on what you're doing. And I'm only being selective with this solder because, or this silver, because some of these pieces I'm looking at and I'm like, ooh, I can use that for something. And you might get discouraged the first time you do this, or the first few times you do this. I know I did. I did it one day. I did like 6 or 7 times. I melted it and screwed it all up on the pour. I didn't pour fast enough, or I poured it too fast. But don't give up, because, or maybe walk away from it for a few weeks or a few days or whatever. Because that's kind of what I did. I was like, oh, this is just too much. I screwed it up so many times. I walked away from it for like 3 months, came back, poured it perfectly, ever since. So sometimes we just need to walk away, reset the brain, reset our eye, come at it from a beginner's eye. Oops, there goes my torch again. Ooh, we gotta do this fast. I tried to turn up the heat a little bit by adding a little more gas and oxy. And turned it off by accident. So this video will be in real time, and you'll see exactly how long it takes to do something like this, because I was watching videos and they always sped this part up, I guess to pass the boredom, and my apologies if it's boring, but it gives you a better idea of exactly how long this takes. And like I said, you can't use a regular butane torch to do this. It just isn't hot enough. You're going to need something with a little bit more guts. That's a big piece of metal in there that's just not melting. There we go. Now we're getting molten, but I still need more silver for this. I did try to use once MAP gas that you can buy at regular home improvement store. MAP gas is the one that comes in a yellow canister, and that works, but it's still not quite hot enough. You're just going to be there for a long time. And if you do use MAP gas, really be sure to heat the bottom of your crucible. You might even have to go back and forth between heating the silver and the crucible, not spending a whole lot of time away from the silver as you hit the bottom of the crucible. But it could happen. It could work. It's going to take a little bit longer. Still need some more silver for this. That's a really big hunk. I don't know. Oh, that did melt. And it melted rather quickly. probably enough silver. Now we just have to make sure that the whole thing is hot enough. And if it's like sort of sticking to the sides of your crucible a little bit, or not spinning in a nice fluid orb or ball, then you're probably getting a little crusty on top. That means it's not quite hot enough. That's weird. I've never seen it quite do that before. I think I gotta skim it off. So, you know that red stuff I showed you on the other one? That's that flux. There still might be a lot of flux on here. So I'm just gonna take my soldering pick and skim over the surface of the silver. And you can see it, especially with the glasses, and take it off. It just sort of floats on the surface. It doesn't really go all the way through. Weird. Maybe I have too much silver in here. Now, once you think that your silver is hot enough, keep going a little bit longer just to make sure. And also, right now, I'm just going to tip it over to the side a little bit so that it touches, it's fanning onto the silver, but it's touching the pour spout right now. I'm going to go back onto that. I might have too much in here, and that's kind of why it's solidifying a little bit. So we'll just have to see. I'm going to go a little bit longer. Might even try to scoop some of that red stuff off again. Now, I think we're about ready. I'm going to pull my flask over a little bit and get the camera in a position where you can see the pour. Now, I'm going to bring it to the spout, but I'm not pouring yet. Oh, let me get my camera right. I'm going to make sure that that spout the pour spout is nice and hot. You see I got it close to the spout, but it's not dumping out yet. That way I can get both the spout and the silver at the same time, and I don't risk solidifying my silver as I heat the spout one last good time. And pray to the casting gods, not too fast and not too slow, just right. All right, that's that. You'll see smoke. It's okay. Smoke is normal. It's just burning off the oil that's in the sand. All right, now I'm going to take off this. I'm going to set this aside so I don't accidentally put my arm in it. Now the moment of truth. Oh, that's my oxygen concentrator. We got 3 of the 4. It's because it all went down into there. 3 of the 4 skulls. And they came out. The other 3 came out fantastic. The burnt stuff's in the eyes, but all the eyes are there. Even the one that I thought wasn't going to be there is actually kind of there. So, there's that. And I don't even have any red gunk. I'm going to come back and clean this off. There they are. And they came out pretty good. You can see the details of the teeth in there. Do you see that brownish red stuff? That's the flux I was telling you about. And there's still a little too much in there. Some got on the back. That's easy enough to clean up. Not as much as what's on this one, I don't think. But now I have plenty of skulls. So making this video got me ahead of my game here. Even though the first one got wrecked. Deleted. I'm going to take you over back to the other station and show you what to do with this. Casting sand is reusable except for the burnt parts that we have here. So I'm just going to take another strip of copper. You can use anything that scoop this out and just scoop out the black, throw it away. And the rest of it can go back in the can. For next time. Awesome. I got sand everywhere. All right, so here's our little scullies. They don't look like much. Once some patina and some sanding is added to them, they'll look a lot better. But I'm really pleased with them. They came out very well. So thank you. Thank you all for watching up until this point. But please watch for a few more seconds because I really do appreciate you guys watching these videos. And I do like making them, except for when I delete them. I do like making them. So please subscribe to my channel. Please hit the like button so that I get more algorithm stuff that goes on. And tell your friends if you know. Please share this video with anybody because after 1,000 subscribers, I can start to monetize my channel. And you all know how this business is as an artist. Any little bit that I can do to make money, bring in a little bit of extra cash is good. And I need that help and support from you guys. So please like and subscribe and tell your friends to like and subscribe to my channel because there may come a time where I just don't have the time to make these videos anymore, and I need the time to make money, especially with winter coming up and the price of oil. But anyway, thank you. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, reach out to me on my Facebook page, Tracy Gross Design, or my Instagram account, Tracy Gross Design, because notifications and replies and stuff like that on the videos on YouTube are slow to go. So thank you. Have a great week. Enjoy. Happy casting.